Hey there, food fans. Welcome back to the Food for Thoughtcast with me, your host, Melissa Reagan, and my esteemed co-host, the official co-host of the Food for Thoughtcast, Chef Steven Gonzalez. What's up, Steve?
Hola,
Hola,
hola.
hola. How are you?
I'm good. I'm hungry, but yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm starving also. Uh, yeah, let's make each
Uh,
other hungry. What was the most amazing thing you ate this week?
you
Anything?
know, what we did was I am always a sucker for like a good like pasta alfredo. So we made some whole wheat pasta, some uh, alfredo sauce from scratch, meatballs, things like that. Nothing extravagant, but just
Nice.
the fact that it's made, with love, the sauce made it 10 times better. Yeah.
Did you do something different though? I thought I
Oh,
saw.
so normally I like to add like garlic powder, or if I do garlic, I don't do like the elephant garlic. I've
Mm-hmm.
noticed like when you use elephant garlic, it has a little bit of a sweeter taste,
Mm-hmm.
or is it just me?
Nope, you're
And so,
right.
yeah, and so we tried to make it kind of healthy, air quotations right there, by
Yes.
using like some cottage cheese and things like that. I mean, it was pretty good though. I'm not going to
Did you
complain.
did you just puree the cottage cheese and like add it at the end, or what did you?
Yeah, so let's see, what did I do? I don't even remember anymore at this point. Yeah, it was like heavy cream, like some cream, some ricotta cheese, that roasted elephant garlic, seasonings, herbs, a little bit some onion
Nice.
powder, stuff like that. Nothing too crazy, and of course your Parmesan cheese, things like that. So a different take on a classic, but still delicious.
Very nice. Very nice. That currently sounds really good right now. It
Yeah.
sounds super good right now.
What did you have?
So I had not had a home cooked meal in the last 20 days or so. I was traveling for work, and so I got home and threw down. I did some braised beef with red beans and potatoes. I made a pot of collard greens,
Oh yeah.
roasted veggies, and cornbread. So,
Damn. Talk
yes,
foodie to me, man.
yes,
Seriously.
yes. I was like, I want down home. I want home cooked. This is what I want, and it was amazing. So, in the spirit of today's episode, I did a braise. So I
Yum.
braised something. We're going to talk about braising today.
I love
So
braising, and braising
it,
loves me. It's all
it's
good.
it's money. It's money. Steven, did you know that braising has been around for 300,000 years, estimated when hominids started using fire to cook? Did you know that?
Gasp. What? That long?
Yes.
Only,
Scandal.
only three. How many years? Only
Only
300,000.
300,000 years
Only,
old.
right? I believe it, but you know what? That's kind of actually pretty cool. It makes you think about how it's really the evolution of braising has gone from like way back then to
Hmm.
even like the last, let's say, 200 years to the last 100 years to even
Yeah.
last year. Like it's ever since
Yeah.
I learned how to braise, I used to think it took so long, and now I appreciate the patience and I appreciate the final product every time.
Well, I think what I like most about this particular method of cooking is that it's fairly hands off. If you have everything ready to go, you
Kind of
know?
like barbecuing, no?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like get like nervous when I'm grilling or doing barbecue, and I always feel like I have to turn it. I can't leave it alone. But you know, it's just
That's
like
when you have someone behind you say, "Leave it alone.
leave it alone.
Let it
Stop
cook."
touching the grill. Yes, yeah. Everybody needs one of those. Like one of those people in their life.
Yeah, I have a question for you.
What's the
Is using the
question?
crock pot considered braising? We're gonna start hard, fast and heavy.
Okay. Well, in order for me to answer that, I have some trivia for you.
Oh
Ready?
crap!
The tables they are turning.
Oh
Okay.
no!
So did you know that an alternate term for braising is pot roasting, but it doesn't necessarily refer to pot roast? Have you ever heard that?
I have heard that before.
Yeah. So I think that if you can keep the food from being completely submerged in the liquid, which is one of the hallmark, things about braising,
Hmm.
then the crock pot can be considered braising. But most of the time, because of the condensation, you're gonna end up with too much liquid. So
Too much liquid's not a bad thing, though. Not all the time.
it's not right, but
Yeah.
braising, it's like the whatever you're braising needs to kind of be like half submerged and half not. You know,
I agree.
so yeah, I don't know, dictionary wise, right? I mean, I think you can get around that if you have the right technique. You know, what do you think about the crock pot?
I think it's good. I think it's a little bit, it's fun, but the only problem I have with the crock pot is that you can't get like all those good sears on
Mm-hmm.
like your ingredients like you can like with the
I
cast
mean,
iron, or
so I think that's a mistake
you
people
can
make
do
a
it.
lot, right? Right. Well, you know, when anybody's braising, a lot of the times, if it's their first time or maybe just a less experienced cook, right? One of the mistakes that's commonly made when you're braising meat is not browning it properly beforehand. Then you're kind of just boiling it. You need that good that Maillard reaction, right, for the
Yeah.
flavor. You need the color and the flavor on the outside, and you need to caramelize those sugars and have the carbon reaction and all that business, right? But um, in the crock pot, you cannot do that. I think you can do that in the instant pot. I think it has a sear
Yeah,
option.
you can.
I don't use that voodoo witchcraft, but if somebody out there has one, it's really it guys. It's really I'm just being funny and silly. I just don't have one. I don't have room for it, and so
Oh,
I don't have counter real estate for it. I have heavy hitters on the counter. I use the crock pot a lot, but I will sear the meat beforehand. Well, then you get into how many steps and how many pieces of equipment and how many pots and pans would you like to use for one recipe? Truly, because the idea of a braise, right, is it's all in one. Yeah.
yep.
So
Mhm.
if I have to use a frying pan and a cast iron skillet and a food processor, I've checked out already.
Yeah.
I've checked out. If I cannot dump it in the crock pot and go, I'm kind of like done. So
I've done it a couple of times, but it takes it takes a very long time to get a little what you would say sear on with the crock pot. It's not the same, it's just not the same.
it's not because it's like a very controlled heat, you
Yeah,
know?
and I know the point of a crock pot is you just throw everything in there, forget about it, and then you come back like the following morning or after work and you have a
Mhm,
meal. Yes, I get
mhm,
all that, but you're
mhm.
right. It doesn't taste the same as compared to when you get that good sear on it. You
Yeah.
just don't.
Don't get me wrong. I love the crock pot. I love the crock pot. I probably use mine once a week. However, the joy of a braise is that you can sear the piece of meat beforehand. If you're gonna dirty that pan, like why wouldn't you just use it to braise it? Like get
Yeah.
yourself a really good enamel cast iron, or just cast iron, or a Guardian service, or whatever you'd like, Dutch oven type situation, whatever you would like to call it. Um, there's lots of different options, or even just a really good oven safe saute pan with a lid. You can braise in there too, you know.
You
So,
can.
eh.
You are
So
right.
I wouldn't leave my. That's kind of the difference, though, right? Like I would leave a crock pot plugged in while I wasn't in the house, but I wouldn't leave the gas oven on. So it's kind of like, are you going to be here or not?
I'm See, I could do it to where like if I'm braising, when I used to live in an apartment and I had electric stovetop,
Mm-hmm.
I would let it go overnight. I didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
When I say, and I still do the same thing with my gas stove. I will let it go overnight. But I don't have the confidence to leave my house, go to work, and then come back and not expect my house to be standing, Not quite there yet.
So you're saying you wouldn't leave the oven, or you wouldn't do a crock pot either?
Well, no, I'd do a crock pot,
Yeah.
But even then, I'm still kind of nervous. Like, what if something shorts
It's
out? And,
I ever since that one episode of This Is Us, it's like every time I plug the crock pot in, I'm like, is the wiring good? Or is it good? I'm gonna kill Jack with this crock pot. It's gonna just catch fire. I don't know, it's crazy. So
yeah.
all right. So braising, the concept of braising, right, comes from the French word braiser. Um, and the definition of a braised food is any food, meat or vegetables, cooked in a small amount of oil and then steamed in liquid, half and half liquid, half solid. So
I thought you were going to say half liquid, half oil. I was about to say, wait a minute. What?
Wait a minute.
No. At that point, you're half confit and making a huge mess everywhere. There's liquid
Hey,
spraying everywhere.
okay. So I need to get your opinion on this. recently interacted with some folks on the internet who were interchangeably using the term confit for other things. So if I say confit, and so for the listener, or if you're watching us on YouTube, thank you so much. Confit, CONFIT. If I say that to you, what does that mean?
It means it's cooked in fat and only fat.
Right. Even if it's not its own fat, right? But it's cooked in fat.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I had somebody suggest to me that when you are cooking down fruit to make jam, that it was confiting. And I was like, I don't think so.
That doesn't mean
I
what you think it means.
I don't think so. If you want to say that you're reducing it or simmering it, I was like, I get, but that's a big stretch. Now maybe I was just being like picky and I was in a bad mood that day. I don't know.
No, I probably would have said the same thing too. It doesn't mean what you think it means, but let me explain why.
Yeah.
And, unless they're actually just gonna, cook their fruit down in a little bit of some fat or something. In my case, I would cook it down in duck fat and then just blend the shit out of it,
almost cook anything in duck fat.
Yeah, apples and duck fat, and berries and duck fat, anything with duck fat,
Gosh. Like goose fat and gooseberries. Could be onto a thing. Could totally be onto a thing.
So, question: could you confit with bacon fat?
Of course, why not?
I just figured it would smoke off at like kind of a lower temperature. So, but you're also not cooking at a very high temperature.
Yeah, so just like braising, if you're doing a confit, it's like low and slow, right? That's kind of the beauty of the braise, low and slow, because you want to like break down connective tissues.
I'm gonna have to start buying a ton of bacon and cooking that off, and then I'm gonna save all the fat, and then I'm gonna confit garlic and bacon fat. I know it's probably been done, but I've never thought of that.
Can you FedEx it to me?
Can you imagine confitting like half duck fat, half bacon fat? It would be, and then like a little bit of butter. You'd have like the trifecta of fat.
Yes.
And I feel my breathing getting heavy just thinking about it right now. I feel like I just ran up the stairs.
I'm winded thinking about the trifecta, if you will.
Yeah. There you go.
Hey.
Did we just invent a new word? Hashtag.
Just did the things.
Trifecta.
Trifecta.
Right. Don't cancel us.
Don't cancel us. We're just here for the Food for Thoughtcast. So technically, right, if you're the object that you're braising or the meat or vegetables, the products that you're using, rather, right, the ingredients, they should be partially submerged, because once you fully submerge something in liquid, you're stewing it. So that's the dictionary, people. It's the dictionary, people. It's official.
I like to go a little heavier on my liquids. Like I like to almost completely submerge, because I like to do is I like to leave the lid off just a hair so it evaporates and get that concentration of liquids, and then like your whole place just smells like awesomeness.
I think it's really important that you, right, like if anybody at home, right, if you're following a recipe for braising, you have to you're either going to have to take the lid off every once in a while or kind of have it like just askew, because what Steve's talking about is really important. You kind of want that liquid to reduce as well. But I think the important, the thing that's really separates braising from stewing is whether or not you're boiling the liquid.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree with you on that one. I think if braising's low and slow, stewing would probably be like a medium temperature.
Well, at least, right? Or if you were stewing something down, but you hadn't thickened the liquid yet, you could do like a rolling boil and it wouldn't hurt anything, But yeah, usually, what are we braising, Steve? What meat is good for braising?
My favorite meat to braise is lamb shanks, hands down.
Yes.
Beef shanks, lamb shanks more importantly, but beef shanks are good too.
Yes. Braising, is a low and slow method. It's a combination of dry and moist heat cooking. So the dry would be that searing the outside, a little bit of fat or oil of your choice. Moist would be whatever liquid you're going to braise in. It could be like red wine, beer, a little Guinness with some
What's
lamb,
your favorite
right?
braising liquid?
Oh, it's going to be like a half red wine, half beef stock situation. But it depends on what the final product is, right? Like if I like to do like a braised lamb and Guinness.
I've never braised lamb with Guinness, but
like a stew meat. Yeah.
Yeah,
Tasty.
I've never done it with Guinness. I would probably drink most of the Guinness. Notice how I swear when I say probably, but you're probably going to disown me when I tell you this, but I usually braise everything with chicken broth. I don't care.
Really?
Like beef, lamb. Oh yeah, I don't care.
I mean, I think it's neutral. I think it's neutral enough though. Like, right?
Oh yeah,
you could put anything in there and kind of make it work. For me, I like to add things for richness, right? Like a little a beef bouillon cube or some Worcestershire, something that has umami, a little soy sauce. But the most important thing, right, is to use meat that has like a lot of tendons, a lot of connective tissue, because braising, it's for the cheaper cuts, right? Like you get a lot of this classical cooking techniques for at a time where people were using like large primal cuts of meat. Initially, they had to break it down to where they could chew it. If you think about early on ancestors, right? First, before fire, they were eating everything raw. How many calories do you expend chewing raw meat or fish or whatever it is? And you don't get as much like caloric density out of it, so you need more food to live. Then cooking revolutionized everything. Once you're able to cook a meat and break it down and it's tender, it takes you less energy to eat it, and it keeps you full for longer. It's pretty amazing.
I don't know. It all sounds good to me. As long as I'm full and happy. Cooked or raw.
You're not eating raw lamb, though, are you? I've seen tartare, I guess.
I haven't gotten there yet. I don't think I'm that well. Like rare, like when I do like my lamb chops and stuff like that. But that's as close to rare or raw as I get.
All right. What about beef ribs? Short ribs.
Short ribs. Yeah. Definitely. I like that not gaminess. I want to say gaminess, kind of like lamb, but you get like that real hearty flavor out of it, especially like I say, when you get that sear on it, because it just brings out all that flavor. I love cooking meats that have their bones with them because you get even more flavor. And the only issue that I have is like if you don't cook it long enough and you're like one of those people who like you pick up the whole piece of meat with like the bone and everything, and you're trying to eat it, like you're burning your finger. I've seen people do that. I'm like, it's not quite the same for me,
Yeah, I get it. What about oxtails? How do you feel about that?
I like oxtails too. I like all that. I like it all.
Oh yeah,
like the neck bones, all that kind of stuff. Oh yeah, I'll eat it all. I don't disagree.
Braising is one of my favorite ways to cook chicken.
Mine too.
Bone-in chicken thighs.
Oh, I thought you were just gonna say in general. That's why I was like, yeah, me too. I never.
Yes.
Braise chicken thighs, but yeah, I can see doing that because especially like when it gets fork tender. Yeah, chicken like that is just the best way.
Once again, it starts with that like you're gonna sear the chicken thighs so hard it's almost gonna be burnt, like that dark golden brown color, so you can get the texture on the skin, right, and that flavor, and obviously the color for the sauce. Listen out there, nobody wants a braised beef dish that's gray. That's what you're gonna get if you don't brown it beforehand. You're like, and also, if you're searing something with and then you're also using the meat that has the bone in it, you're gonna get all that gelatin like into the broth or the cooking liquid, and you can see the unctuous and velvety. You get all the texture that comes out in the sauce too.
Agreed.
What about one of the most famous braised dishes? I think arguably there's the classics, right? Coq au vin.
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Yeah. Ossobuco, right?
Yep. Delicious. Love it. I haven't made coq au vin in years. It's been a while, and I'm long overdue to make it. Ossobuco, same thing. I haven't made it in quite some time, and I need to, But
I have not made osobuco since culinary school because I can't afford veal because I went to culinary school and I have culinary school debt.
yeah, I I I made it a handful of times since culinary school, but I mean, the last time I made it, I can't even remember. It's a
It's
long
so
time.
good though. The
Oh,
fun thing about ossobuco, right, is that you get the inside of the veal shank has the little bit of marrow in it.
mhm.
It's like a treat. It's like a treat inside a cereal box. It's like a prize. You know, it's so
Yeah.
good. It's so good. All right. So if
All you're
anybody out
missing
there
is
has like
bread. Yeah.
never braised, what do you think? Like, what are some tips if somebody's never made a braising recipe before?
If someone's never made a braising recipe, my suggestion, my tips are always, uh, like we were talking about, season it, season the meat, sear it off, get a good sear. If you're using vegetables, which you better be using vegetables, cook those off, get a good sear on those too. Um, I always say try to get a lot of that flavor off the bottom of the pan because it's
Mm.
not burnt. It's flavor. It's fond is what
It's
we call it.
fond. It's where we get fondue, guys
Yeah,
and ladies.
exactly. But I mean, the key to a good braise, if you've never done it, is just patience. That's what it really comes down to. Um, I when I first started braising, I thought it was the worst thing ever because I didn't have any patience. And now as I get older, I appreciate again all that patience because you have time to take care of business, do chores, have a
Drink a
beer,
beer.
drink a exactly. And if you put love into it, it'll definitely reward you. But just don't over season it because I've done that a handful of times to where my broth is too salty.
Well, and likewise, right? If you a lot of times what I'll see in like a standard crockpot recipe is that it's way too much cooking time because there's so much condensation happening in that lid, even if it has a little steam vent, that
Mhm.
you go past tender and then meat starts to get that sawdust, like it shreds off and dries out.
Yeah,
Meat can dry out even if it's covered in liquid, like it's completely possible. So it's the same thing with braising, right? There's that sweet spot of like just fork tender, and it's really really worth the wait. So
yeah. I've done that a handful of times where I've overcooked it, and yeah, it gets that sawdust texture.
yeah,
There,
it's
yeah, I
kind of
was going
like
to call it dry, but when you said that, it just
it's
totally
yeah,
made sense to me.
it's kind of like a sandwich territory after that. Like there's really no turning back for. It's really sad when you if you overpraise something like
I mean, the only way that you can save it, and even then you can't save it, you just gotta take it out of the pot, sear it with, throw with a little bit of juice like in a saute pan to kind of get some of that
Mhm,
into it. But even then,
mhm.
you have to put so much stuff to cover up the dryness. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well,
So
it's kind of like I spoke about on the flavor and um, seasoning and spice episodes that if you're trying to fix a soup that's too salty, by the time you've added all the things that might offer you solution, you're going to have like twice as much volume as you started with.
yeah,
So it's almost not worth doing. You cannot uncook an overpriced meat.
yeah,
So but also, braising is like a really safe method for. I mean, it's really, really hard to mess it up. Don't run out of liquid. Don't cook it too high. Don't cook it too fast. Right? If as long as you're doing those things, like yeah,
Let me ask you this, Melissa. When you do your beef,
yes, Stephen.
when you cook your beef or braise your beef, what grade do you use? Does it have to be prime, or are you cool with
No,
choice, or are you cool
go
with
get
select?
go get the cheapest thing you can find that's on sale. The
Well,
cheapest thing you can find.
you can get roasts and shit like that for that are prime and whatnot for pretty inexpensive,
You
but
can,
like,
but why
but
would you use
to a
prime?
noob, to someone
Like,
new to it, like
yeah.
they're gonna see a cheap piece of meat and they're gonna cook it that way.
Mhm.
Do you think they'd appreciate select the final product versus prime? Do you think they'll notice a difference?
I would not spend the money for prime for a moist heat cooking method, like a braised stew, pot roast, crock pot type deal. I would not
Okay.
spend the money. I would spend the money on prime meat when it's like a steak. That's just for that's my 2 cents, because there's really no reason for the end product is so far from where it started. It's like I could not tell you in a blind taste test whether a pot roast was choice or prime, legitimately, because that's what braising does. Like, it's going to make it tender. You know,
You know
it's
what?
the
I'm gonna have to try that.
equalizer.
We're gonna have to try that. We're gonna have to do them side by side
Like
where
a
we have
$47
and
pot
then
roast.
prime. Yeah, I mean, but if you think about it, like you can get a good prime chuck roast for what, like 15, $20, and then select, of course, would be like $7.
Is
but
that
still,
how we start the Patreon? Hey, everybody out there, if you're gonna, we're gonna start the Patreon so we can do cooking experiments, right? And you guys are gonna send Steve and I your hard-earned money so we can do things like that.
Yeah, and then you're gonna tell Steven he doesn't know squat. But seriously, like I mean, I don't mind splurging a little bit for like prime, like for a chuck roast or inexpensive stuff, like even prime sirloin. Like I think prime sirloin's awesome. Whereas like a lot of people are like, oh, if you're gonna get a steak, it has to be a ribeye. No, you can still get a good steak and sirloin and all that fun stuff. You know,
it depends. Yeah. No, I mean, I totally get it. So depending on the recipe and what you're gonna put in and around and with the meat determines like what grade I'm gonna buy, right? So brisket, I'm not going to slather it in sauce. It might have a very simple dry rub, and I would want choice because the meat has to stand alone, right?
I've gotten the same good results with select too.
You totally can. You totally can, right? But if it's something like, by comparison, right? If this isn't really apples to oranges, but you'll understand what I'm saying, right? If I'm going to make a pork shoulder in the crock pot and I'm covering in like honey, mustard, Coke, red wine, and a crap ton of barbecue rub, and I'm letting it go for like 12 hours on low, like I'm not going to know the difference between that and like Berkshire or Heritage pork. You know what I mean? Like, the more crap I'm going to put on top or with it, I'm just like, I'm not going to spend the money there. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a really good question. Nobody's ever asked me that before. So I'm like,
because I've done it, and I mean, you can kind of like to you and myself, I can taste a difference, but it doesn't like it's not a bad result. You know what I'm saying? Sure. Like it's still good, but you can definitely tell like, okay, this was definitely select. I can definitely taste the difference versus like something choice. At least usually I like to go choice as well. I mean, like I said, I'll splurge from time to time on prime, but choice for if I'm braising, that's the way to go for me.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I think it honestly though, it depends on like the cooking vessel too, right? So it's like if you have a braising pan, like a shallow, large, two-handled, it's going in the oven. How much work is it going to take you, right, to make the end product be what you want from select to choice to prime? You know, like for my money, if I'm going to buy something that's prime, it's going to be like a actual prime rib or like a USDA prime, like a ribeye. And in that case, I'm going to sear it. I'm going to sear it. Or I'm going to grill it. You know,
you just saying that makes me think about like the holidays where it's like, I know, you should get prime rib and it's choice.
It's prime.
You're like, that's not prime rib. That's just a ribeye roast.
I mean, like a prime rib.
It has the word prime in the name.
It's prime.
Oh yeah, we made prime rib, and then you look at its choice and you think, well, it'll still make it good, but it's not prime rib.
It's a ribeye roll. It's a ribeye roast, right? Isn't that that would be like the best potable ever though? Like Optimus Prime rib. Optimus Prime McRib. Look at all the fandoms that just went. Yeah.
Where's Roth when you need him?
Roth, where are you?
We need to discuss some fast food ideas.
We need to discuss some fast food menu ideas. We want McDonald's to use certified Angus.
Can you imagine? Oh goodness. Yeah. But when it comes to braising, like, okay, so let me ask you this: what do you prefer to do stovetop braising? Would you do it over like a fire braising or in the oven? What's your preferred method?
So yesterday I braised beef with
Mhm.
red beans. I used canned red beans. I was
No
on a
judgment.
time. I was
None.
on a time budget, right? But I um had to get them done before work, right? So I'm like, well, okay. I used the stove because it was stew meat. So, this is how I approach, right? The larger the piece of meat, the bigger space I need to cook, right? Like these were stew meat cubes. I knew that they weren't going to take a long time and I could use a littler pan on top of the stove because I was going to be around to watch it. If I'm doing like a pork shoulder, yeah, it's going like in a braising pan, like large surface area, but
Mhm.
short, but like tall lid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or Dutch oven, you know. So mm.
So would it still be considered a braise if you throw it like with if you fill it up halfway with liquid and then throw it in the oven? That's still a braise, no? That
Yeah,
would be a roast.
I, I, it has
Now
to be
we're
the
getting
modern.
OCD
Okay, so
technical.
right, like so when you look at the original word in the French, it's cooking over live coals. Well, we don't have to do that now because we have electricity and gas. Um, so I think it's now. I think then, right when you get into the modern times, it goes to like what's the meat to liquid ratio, and where's the heat coming from?
Yeah.
Well, the ovens, the heat source is on the bottom, even though the heat itself is, you know,
Hmm.
like this. I don't know. So I don't know.
Fair
I have
enough.
a visitor.
Uh-oh. Who's
So
visiting today?
the visitor bueno. Yeah.
Oh, I closed the door because my visitor will be in my lap and he likes to snore and fart, and I'm pretty much talking about myself in this case, you know.
So if I shut my dogs out, this podcast would be about 48 minutes to an hour
You get that too?
of howling. Howling.
Mine, my dog likes to just like scratch at the door.
Yes.
He's discovered that if he does that long enough, someone will answer him.
Nice.
Yeah, no, yeah, it depends.
It's the wrong kind of positive reinforcement.
So what I was going to say before we had a special guest host join us, um, have you ever done it like on? Have you ever done it on the fire, like Dutch oven style and stuff like that?
No.
I guess I was going to ask
No.
you, not
I guess
say.
like a campfire. What?
I said I should have said I was going to ask you, not say. Have you ever? You
Oh.
know.
Well, no. I mean, like over a fire, I've used it to boil, but no, I can't say that I have. Not like a proper brace. Have you?
I when I was in the Scouts, we used Dutch ovens, but it was like for baking stuff,
You know,
cornbread, things like that. You know.
it doesn't. If you're just like farting in your sleeping bag, it doesn't count.
Yeah, exactly. But I haven't done that in years.
Hey, Dutch oven.
Both. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't mind doing that though. You know, like just starting a fire, a controlled fire in my backyard, like with my
Like in a fire pit.
ovens and fire pits and all that, and you know, like just. But the thing though is, I would imagine you'd have to use cast iron. Like you couldn't do like enamel coated. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you'd probably just mess that all up. And
It has to be straight cast iron.
well, I don't know
right?
because I use my enamel coated one like on my stove, on my gas stove top. So it should be fine though.
I mean, yeah.
The inside should be fine, right? I don't
Mm,
know. Yeah, we'll find out.
interesting.
We're gonna see how. I'm gonna have to do that.
I guess
You know, when it starts to get cold, make
you could
fire, with the wood.
let
all
us
that
know how
fun
that turns out if you had to buy like a new enamel cast iron or not.
They're not very expensive, I think.
Are you rocking like a Le Creuset or is it something else? Some cheaper.
Oh no, HB brand, totally.
Amazon Basics over here was $40. This thing's my workhorse. I'm gonna do everything in it.
I'm
Marinara.
sorry, the whole Le Creuset stuff.
Yeah.
That's for. I have a couple pans, and they're not paying me to say this, but those are not the best. Like they're cool, they're awesome, but when you put them to actual use, like they start to fall apart.
Yeah, they will wear out. So if anybody out there is listening and you don't know where to start, right? And you're going to braise something, the enamel cast iron stuff from HEB, Target, Amazon, Lodge, Cracker Barrel, great places to start, right? workhorse that you can use every day. I do everything in this enamel cast iron pot. I boil pasta and I make marinara. I did collard greens in it yesterday. I braise in the oven. I'll bake sourdough in it, right? Like I'll do everything in there, right? There's no need to break the bank to buy something special to braise in. It could be something as simple as a cast iron skillet with a lid, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah,
most definitely.
That old one that your grandma's got, it's knocking around her house somewhere. Season that bad boy up. You could even use you can braise in stainless steel as well.
Yep.
Anything that's, I say oven safe because for me, I like the controlled heat. Like I set it at a temperature. I know it's a temperature. I have a thermometer, right?
Yeah.
The stovetop braising is a little bit like, I have a gas stove. It's an old house. If a draft comes through, not consistent, right? Like if something knocks the lid or knocks the handle of the pan or a dog gets curious or whatever, not consistent heat. Like can't trust it.
Yeah.
Can't trust
That's the only thing about cooking it over like the fire, you have to just constantly watch it though.
I mean, if you're camping and you have nothing else to do, great. Like if it's like Thursday night and I just got home from work, like what is it?
That's kind of what you do when you're camping. You have nothing to do and you just
nothing to do. Yeah.
Hang out by the fire.
You're just being in the outside, which sounds miserable.
I like glamping. I don't like camping anymore.
I see.
So yeah. That's just me.
No, I get it. You would be so proud of me. I have news for you, Steven.
Tell me some news.
I used an air fryer for the first time yesterday. The first time.
Now tie it into the braising. You braised and air fried at the same time.
I didn't.
You imagine?
It won't. I mean, if it did it, I don't know. Is that not just like an oven? I don't know, dude.
So what'd you make and how did it turn out? That's the question.
All right. I just air fried potatoes, roasted potatoes, and they were great. It was great. I was like impressed by it and had never used one. It was very intuitive. Didn't read anything. My brother bought it a Black Friday deal and got a fantastic deal on it. And I just like pressed buttons and picked the vegetable option. I thought it was fantastic. I didn't put any oil on them. I just did like a Yukon Gold and Sweet together. Nice. I feel like at some point the kitchen appliances are like the streaming versus cable, right? Like you go like,
yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, it's like we have cable. It has 50 things. That's what the Instant Pot does. And then it's like, we have the air fryer and the toaster oven and the stove and the oven. And it's like, okay, I bought all the things. Now I have the thing. I don't know. Now we bundled them all together and you could braise in the air fryer. Well, it's like,
I am just waiting for you to be the next air fry spokesperson.
And I've not.
You haven't lived until you've air fried.
I'm not the guy.
This air fryer will slice and dice and cook it at the same time.
The next
there's more.
But wait, there's more. Well, it's like, but now, I have 5 appliances that do all the other things. And like, I don't need the air fryer to braise. A great example, right? The Instant Pot makes yogurt. I'm like, Dannon makes yogurt. I don't need this to make yogurt.
Oh, we're not that cool. I'm sorry. There's no way.
I don't have the patience. I don't know, dude. But yeah, I thought I was like, I have to tell Steve and all the rest of the 2 listeners that care. So
I like air frying, but I like braising too.
Yeah. If it braised, that would be pretty cool. But no, I equal parts, right? Collard greens on the stove, beef on the stove. Yeah. I don't think collard greens count as a braise. I was rip roaring boiling them. I was in a hurry. I didn't even get any color on the bacon. Any Southerner would be ashamed. Like
I was just about to say, you ain't Southern unless you take your time.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So another question, and this one's a legitimate question. So whenever you do your braising, do you use like parchment paper or wrap it up or anything like that?
I see where you're going with this. I, like you, it depends on what the final product needs to be. So I might like leave the lid off a little bit so there's evaporation, right? But yes, I will make a cartouche once in a while. You tell us what it is, you sneaky.
Well, Yeah, what I mean, I was just gonna say it's kind of like making your own little pressure cooker,
It
if you
is.
will. Yeah,
It is. Yeah.
and it speeds it up just a hair.
I
But
do that. I do that for if I also have like a mismatch pot or a pan that doesn't have a lid. It's pretty nifty. You can wrap it in parchment and foil and get the seal sealed in there so you can steam and boil things. But usually no. I mean, I use the lid. I don't know.
I used to just use the lid for many years, and then I I was taught that you could use some parchment paper and then also wrap it up to get like a real tight
Mm-hmm.
close with foil, and
Mm-hmm.
then put a lid on that. And I thought that's actually a pretty damn good idea, and I do that quite often now. But like there are times where I just want my whole house to smell like good cooking food.
Right. Right. Why conceal it? But tell us what's a cartouche? Tell us what it is.
You're putting me on the
Hmm.
spot here, so
It's exactly what you said, right? So,
yeah.
listener,
Yeah.
viewer, a cartouche, fancy word for you have made a lid of parchment paper with a little vent in it for steam, and it sits right on top of the food. So,
Basically.
right on top of the food. Funsies. You know, actually, it's funny that you should mention that because I started braising. Not actually braising anymore. I started doing short ribs in a different way about 4 years ago.
How?
I used to be a big fan of the sear and the mirepoix and the braise. Now I like wrapping them in plastic and foil and putting them on a sheet pan, and it keeps all the stuff contained, like a really heavy dry rub and some Dijon, and
Okay.
I'll marinate them in half red wine. It's kind of like a 4 parts marinade, right?
Hmm.
Water or beef broth, right? Red wine, soy, Worcestershire, yeah. Um, pull them out, pat dry, brush Dijon, heavy dry rub of seasonings, very peppery.
Uh-huh.
Maybe some sliced onions as a bed, but yeah, parchment and foil or plastic and foil. Like 4 hours at 450.
When you say
It's not braising.
plastic, help me understand. Like
Like
you are,
wrap.
but
Yeah.
that's the outside of the foil, right?
Mm, no. Like plastic inside. So plastic to contain juice, create seal, and foil to reflect heat, keep plastic from melting. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Probably like
It's been
a
a while
lot
since
of
I've done that.
aluminum and PVs like leaching into my delicious food. Um, yeah, plastic.
Okay.
Hey, I don't know. It's a thing.
It's been a while since I've done that. So like every time that happens to me, I always get so paranoid that it's going to taste like plastic.
I know. I know. I don't
Yeah.
know. I can't even remember. I saw it somewhere and was intrigued, and like it was one of those things like I tried it and never went back.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I braised that beef yesterday. It was like stew meat, but I took a braising approach to it. So I browned it. I browned the crap out of it, and then on the stovetop, and then added a lot less liquid than I would for like
Yeah.
stew, right? Um, and then yeah, I let her rip.
I'm gonna have to
So
try it. I'm gonna have to totally
yeah,
try that now. Yeah.
yeah,
Let that
yeah,
go for a bit.
yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, I still get a really great sear on it, you know, just like I would if I was braising it in liquid. But I don't even. I guess it's just roasting at that point.
Technically, yeah. But I mean, it's still good.
Steven,
I
would
like.
you ever braise seafood?
I was thinking about that earlier while we were talking, and I would say no,
Mm,
only because I'd be too scared of it getting like just uh, the consistency is just gonna be terrible. And
yeah,
I say that because like I'll poach now. I will poach seafood, but I
mm,
won't braise it. Does
yeah,
that make sense?
yeah, yeah. Poaching, very similar to braising, more liquid. I think
A more
probably like
flavorful liquid, no? Like you
three
because you're adding
quarter.
a whole
Yeah,
lot more things to it without. No, no. Refresh me if I'm wrong, but like if you're poaching, would you throw it like have mirepoix and garlic and stuff like that in there, or just like a very flavorful broth?
well, yeah. So you can make. Wait, now we have to take it all the way. I'm so old, Steve. I don't remember. You have to take it 20 years ago. You could make a court. You could make a court
A
bouillon
bouillon?
to poach in, which is like really aromatic, highly seasoned liquid. But the poaching, you're going to have more liquid than product. Um,
Yeah.
so you could poach like a side of salmon, or
Totally. Yeah.
you poach an egg is probably like the best example, but it has a lot to do with the amount of liquid and the temperature that it actually is. And so, of course, if you poach an egg, you're not going to brown it beforehand, and you're not
Yeah.
slow cooking it, so it wouldn't be braised. But yeah, I don't. I think maybe you could braise monkfish is probably like the meatiest, but like why? I don't know. Just random question.
I was gonna say the only way that I ever really cook monkfish, like I'll throw it on the grill from time to time, or I'll just slice it into medallions and cook it that way. But
Yeah,
I, we'll have to try. We'll have to try braising monkfish sometime.
yeah.
I feel like it
I've
would be good.
I've never had the urge. I wonder if anybody out there, if you've ever braised seafood, like, won't you let us know about it? The Food for Thoughtcast on Facebook and Instagram. I'm really intrigued by the idea. I'm sure somebody has done it. I can't think of an application where I would use it, but I'm also not in a job where I'm dealing with a lot of seafood. So,
Well, let's see if let's see. Braised seafood. Can it be done? Braised shrimp. Braised
but
seafood tubes. Braised noodles with seafood. I feel like these aren't really like if you're gonna braise shrimp, you're only gonna braise it for like what
yeah,
a minute if that because you're
yeah.
gonna overcook that.
Yeah, so I mean, the original purpose of braising, right, is to break down, you know, to make something easier to chew and to break down something with lots of tendons and connective tissue. So, why in the world would you use a quick cooking protein like shrimp in a
Yeah,
braise? It's the same reason why you wouldn't necessarily braise boneless, skinless chicken breast, because it's going to turn into sandpaper. It's just going to be super dry.
yeah. No, I can't.
So,
I just can't
I
get
can't get on
behind that.
board.
It's not
I can't.
braised.
I can't do it. I can't do it. I
No.
can't do it. So, what do you like? Walk us through a typical braised. Let's give the listeners some jumping off places for recipes, right? Like if you're gonna braise, let's do pot roast. If you were gonna
Okay,
do it a classic braise.
so all it doesn't matter what kind of protein I'm using, I do it all the same. Where I've got my mirepoix, which is your celery, your
Mm-hmm.
carrots, your onion, and I have tomatoes. If I have tomato paste, it's an added bonus. But if I don't, that's
Mm-hmm.
fine. If I have red wine, that's an added bonus. If I don't, that's fine too.
Yeah.
I have to have my broth, my protein. I always love doing. So keep in mind, I'm starting with all my ingredients, right? I've got my herbs, whether it's rosemary, thyme. I love to combine those. Bay leaves, oregano. I
Yeah.
always love oregano with
Mm-hmm.
anything braised personally. So then what I do is, in my crock pot or my enamel, coated cast iron, all that stuff,
Yeah.
is I'll get a good, like I'll season the crap out of my meat and I'll get a really good hard sear on it. And from that point, my kitchen starts to smell really good. So I take that out and then I throw all of my vegetables in and let them get a good sear too. At that point, that's where I'll start to add like my wine, or if you mentioned like cooking with beer, stuff like that, you
Yeah.
throw that in and you just kind of gently get the bottom off. And then I'll start to put I'll put all my liquids in, bring that up to a quick boil, and then just put it down, throw my protein in there. And from there, I just cover it, let it go. Usually,
Yeah.
typically 4 hours. That's what I usually do. And but like I said, so whether I'm cooking braising beef ribs, lamb shank, pork, like it's always the same ingredients for me. Like I don't change that because for me it's a winning combination.
Yeah.
And you get a slightly different flavor each time, whether you're doing lamb, beef, or pork, you know?
Nice. I really like that, the idea of that approach. There are a couple things that I like to add to a classic braising liquid that'll give it a little bit more depth, that are kind of like secret. Not super secret, but Vegemite is one. Really can give like an umami. So in the business, right, we'd use like beef paste,
Mm-hmm.
very salty umami concentrated like bouillon paste.
Yeah.
But at home, the bouillon cube or a can of beef stock or a carton, like I'm not one of those people that's going to say homemade is best. However, which way you feed your family and works for you is best for you, right?
Yeah.
And I'm
Agreed.
not sitting on piles of homemade beef stock, and I'm not here to shame anybody, right? If you have time and you have soup bones, great. Like soup bones used to be peasant building blocks of very simple food, and now they cost a lot of money. So I totally get it.
Hmm.
But Vegemite, uh, you could do a little anchovy paste in something that's more Italian leaning.
Hmm.
In the mirepoix, if I'm doing tomatoes or basil, or it's gonna go, not so French, right? Not like red wine and thyme. I like to do fennel as part of
Okay.
the
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
base veg. It kind of depends on like what the flavors. Like if you were doing, right, like you said, um, oregano and bay leaves and garlic. I think that really lends itself to a lot of different cooking styles, right? Like you can
Mhm.
go any direction with it. But if I was going to do something more Asian, like lemongrass stock, really really tasty,
And ginger.
and then and
Yeah.
ginger, and then there's some things where I hate this flavor that celery gives it. I don't do celery if I'm going to do like pork. I think it's just me. I think it's just me.
It's not
Like,
just you because I'm not a
yeah.
big fan of celery. So whenever I do my mirepoix, granted it's supposed to be like 50% onion, 50% or
Mm-hmm.
25% carrots and onions or celery. I'm sorry. I go a little bit lighter on the celery.
Yeah.
That's just me though.
Yeah. And in the winter, if I'm doing something really heavy, I might put root vegetables in with that mirepoix. So I might
Okay.
start out with like onion, carrot, celery, but I might also go to like a turnip or rutabaga or parsnips,
Hmm.
right? And then I'll take the spices and the flavors that way, like a cinnamon stick,
Yeah.
like a Spanish style braising liquid, a cinnamon stick, or passata, which is an ultra concentrated tomato paste. Usually comes in a tube. It's just a deeper
Yeah.
flavor. And then sometimes I'll roast my mirepoix in the oven to get it super duper brown. Um, so
Total extra step, but you know what?
yeah,
It's totally
like
worth it
if
though.
you
Yeah.
have the time, right? If you have the time, if you're trying to get something on the table really fast, a braise is not the way to go.
Right.
Give yourself the time, right, to make it really amazing. A braise is like I want to try a new thing on a Sunday afternoon type deal, you know.
That's
Like,
something that you start like kind of early,
mm-hmm,
early
mm-hmm,
morning, depending on what time you want to eat. Yeah, I agree. Fortunately, it's just me and Ursula, so it's not like I have time to let it go all day if I
mm-hmm.
want.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you know,
No, I
but I
totally get
agree.
it.
I totally agree with you on using cans of broth or stock or whatever versus making it all from scratch. Because I mean, who has all those bones just lying around, or who has
Yeah,
the fridge or freezer space for all that broth? You know.
yeah, absolutely. Now, if you have something left over, like a turkey carcass from Thanksgiving or a chicken carcass from like a roasted chicken dinner, is that weird? I feel like people will go like, ooh, carcass. Yeah. It's like there's not a better. It's bones, right? But
The bones.
it's a carcass. People get over it. But yeah, yeah. Roast
I
that puppy off and boil it and make some really great stock. But then use the stock to braise something else. It's the gift that keeps giving.
You ever do that or
Yeah.
no? I
What
usually
it
just I've
like?
done it a couple of years where I've saved the bones and then
Yeah.
roasted and make a
Oh,
broth
from
or a
from
stock out of them.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, but I
Yeah,
usually just throw the bones away.
you're like turkey noodle. But I find that you can get enough. You can get enough flavor from the meat
Oh yeah,
itself.
most
If you
definitely.
if you're starting with, or you know stock is just bones and broth is like meat and bones. I
Hmm.
feel like you can make it just fine from like you can just keep the turkey wings, right? Like you can
Yeah.
have plenty of flavor there. You don't have
You
to
know
keep the
what?
whole thing.
And so one of the other reasons why I like to use so much broth or liquid whenever I'm braising is because you have all that leftover liquid, so you can make like a different soup or stew, but you
Mm-hmm.
also have all that flavor previously. So like you were saying, when you have all that marrow and stuff, and it all comes out, it makes it gelatinous.
Yes,
Just makes it so much better.
that's my
You know,
favorite. So, what do you do typically if you're gonna say that you're going to braise uh, beef short ribs, like the traditional way, right? Do you finish those with, do you make a separate sauce or do you thicken the braising liquid and then make gravy with it?
I use the braising liquid. I
Mm-hmm.
will use a little bit of that mirepoix
Mm-hmm.
and put that into a pan, get a little bit of a further sear if that's even possible. But I throw my liquid in there, and depending on if it thickens up or not, I might add a little bit of a slurry to it. But I also, of course, like a little bit of some red wine, things like that.
Yeah.
And that's where I get
Butter. Do you put
real.
butter?
I do. I do. I finish it with butter. But this is where I get real paranoid about like over reducing it, because if you use like just a regular broth, it
Mm-hmm.
gets salty. So I always go low sodium because, of course, you can put salt in, you can't take it out, type of deal.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I typically do,
Yeah.
uh, and it always comes out good. And then you have all
No, I
those. You
think,
just have that denseness from all the vegetables and all that.
yeah. I mean,
I
I
think
think that's a really great like tip, right? For anybody out there that wants to braise something, the liquid needs to be fairly neutral. Season the ingredients really, really well, but the liquid's going to continue to reduce. It's going to concentrate the flavor and concentrate it and concentrate it and concentrate it. And if enough of it evaporates, you can end up with something that's too salty at the end. And
yeah. I'm
then
the
you're
first
going
time
to
that
try to
happens.
you're going to try to dilute it and fix it and just kind of ruin it, right?
Yeah, you're just gonna have
So
a loose sauce. The first time I ever did that, I tasted it and I just thought, ugh, this is horrible. And then I realized, well, I season my proteins and stuff really well, and I didn't use like a low sodium broth, so that's probably why. And for that application, yeah, you want low sodium. If all my braising liquid that I have left over, if I just make another soup out of it, yeah, I'll use just regular seasoned or salt broth, if you will.
yeah, yeah. I mean, also too, just keep in mind whatever vegetables you're going to put in a braise. If it's something that's going to give off liquid, you need to kind of factor that in. If it's a more watery vegetable, like A, is it really going to benefit from being cooked that long? And B, if it's going to give off more liquid, like it could really water something down, and then you're just kind of making soup at that point. It's really stew, right? But you want the liquid to give flavor and break down and tenderize like whatever the protein is. Um, one of the other things you can do that I really enjoy is you can use the original vegetables to
Mm-hmm.
puree and thicken the sauce.
That's what I was gonna say
Yeah,
too.
you keep it gluten free. That's where the celery, it really kills me. If there's too much celery and carrots, then you're just making like
Yeah.
carrot soup. Like
Yeah.
you're just like,
But
oh,
if
this isn't
yeah,
what
and
I
you can
wanted.
definitely you can definitely tell when you use too much carrots because it almost has like a sweetness, like kind of metallic flavor to it, or is it just me?
No, you're totally right.
But yeah, it's funny that you say that because I was going to say, you could also just blend it all up and strain it through a chinois. But I mean, like, A, not everyone has a chinois, but B, who has the time to do all that? Um, I
Yeah.
do from time to time, but do I want to take all those extra steps? Not really. I'm
So
lazy.
something else you can do, right? And Steven's making a really great point here is that if you want to puree everything at the end to make a really nice gravy or sauce, all the things that won't blend up, you could put them in a little packet of cheesecloth so that you could just fish it out later, also known as a bouquet garni. Or you can strain the entire liquid and then save the vegetables as a little bit of a thickener. But it's great, like if you don't want gluten, if you don't want to make a cornstarch slurry, if you're worried about reducing it so far that it'll A, taste burnt, or B, be salty, like that's a good thing you could do. It'd be a
Yeah.
great thing.
There's
you know
always a lot of ways to do it. It all
and
just depends on how much time you have.
please don't blend a bay leaf, like don't do that, just don't.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna strain it anyways, who the hell
And then
cares?
it's just like, I don't know, too much laurel and something. It's just like, oof, it's a
Right?
lot. It's a lot. Um, but yeah, no, I think braising is probably one of my favorite ways to cook as well. So many things you can do. It'll take like plain old chicken legs, you could make really, really special with a really great braise, right? Like any cut of meat. So one of the ways that I learned the best was just growing up, and I say growing up, in culinary school and onward, right? Like I'm still not a grown up, but in my 20s, I would just navigate around the grocery store based on what was on sale. And all the stuff that's on sale is nothing that you can just cook on both sides in a frying pan and make it taste good. And that's where you're going to get all the things that can be braised really well, like oxtail and neck
Beef tongue
bones
and
and
beef cheeks and all that
beef
stuff.
tongue and
I
beef
love it.
cheeks and pigtails and all
Have you
sorts,
ever done
right?
pigtails and pig ears and stuff? I like
Yes.
that. I
I don't
totally
like
do.
the ears, but I like that if you brine the pigtails and then get a really good sear, and then they kind of have that gelatinous. It's kind of like a really gelatinous like chicken wing if you
Okay.
do it just right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So good. It's really good. So
Yeah, I like all that. Not, I don't know why. Whenever I think braising, I always think of lamb shanks, like I said earlier.
yeah.
But then I don't know why I didn't think of. Oh wait, there's also lengua, and I love that stuff. That's when it's like freezing or we have cold fronts and stuff like that. That's like my favorite breakfast. And then you just wrap it all up in a tortilla, or even like a little avocado and some cheese with that. Oh, so good.
Yes. Yes. One thing that I like to do is I'll find kind of I think shoulder tender a lot of times is like a really, really good alternative to chuck. You're paying for the name and like it's better to me. Or if you can find like sirloin flap meat or something like that. But any of those things that will benefit from like a low and slow cooking process, I love to just cook it with I'm not gonna lie, I'll find my favorite jarred green salsa, sear the meat really, really well, some lime juice, some green salsa, let it braise in there as the braising liquid, and then it's breakfast tacos all week long. Like all week long.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Breakfast tacos.
So well, put an egg in it breakfast, and then the
there
rest
you
of
go.
the time. I actually breakfast anytime as long as you just woke up.
Yeah. I have a very fun next few days of work. So my next day off, I'm trying to find an excuse to like braise something, but at the same time, I'm trying to be healthy. And usually, like for me, it's all about red meat, and I love all that stuff. And I shouldn't be eating so much, but I'm like,
you should challenge yourself to do like some sort of a braised pork loin, like yeah.
You're right. The thing about pork loin is it's because it's so lean, like it dries out so much.
Yeah. So I bring it up. I bring it up on purpose, right? To say, hey, pork loin, not the one for braising, but pork shoulder, picnic shoulder, rump, like however you would like to say that, right? Perfect for braising.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can do it, but then you're gonna have that dried out sawdust. Okay. Hear me out. This is how we're gonna have to do it. You're gonna have to brine your pork loin for about a week, and then, well, even then, there's no point in braising something that's been brined. So. There's a will, there's a way. We will find it.
There's a little bit of a fine line. Now, you could call it a braise, perhaps. I like to do a pork tenderloin in the crock pot. But the end product is I'm always shredding it up. So it's really like no point. Pork tenderloin and pork loin, really, really good roasting. Really, really good for roasting, guys.
Oh, yeah.
Guys and ladies, right? You can cut your own chops out of a loin too. Those are going to be a more quick cooking method, or dry heat, right? But yeah, when it comes to braising, the possibilities are nearly almost endless for anything that has a bone in it. All your chicken leg quarters, thighs, drumsticks. Cacciatore is a really, really good beginner's introduction to a braise. And so is something like beef bourguignon or coq au vin or ossobuco. Don't let all the fancy words dissuade anybody out there. Grab a hold of a recipe. If you have questions, reach out to us. Go to chefstevengonzalez.com. Go to Food for Thoughtcast, Facebook and Instagram. Let us know. Let us know what you're cooking. Because honestly, when it's under 80 degrees outside, chefs start braising stuff. No doubt. No doubt.
Agreed. It all just depends on what they're braising and what kind of liquids they're using. Are you using beer? Are you using wine? Are you using broth? You better not be using water. But stranger things have happened.
You can use water.
I mean, you can use water, but it's not going to be the same.
You can. It just won't be as good.
Yeah, but you shouldn't. Just
You
because
should.
you can doesn't mean you should.
That's right. Jurassic Park hashtag.
I forgot.
So,
Back to the dinosaur ages.
the dinosaurs. I hope that you've enjoyed today's episode. This little tidbit brought to you by the fact that it's now cold enough to braise. It never has to be cold to braise, but it's certainly more enjoyable. If you're going to heat the whole house, why not make it smell amazing at the same time?
It's a win-win.
Steve.
Yeah, but it warms your soul too.
It does warm your soul. There's something very comforting about braised foods, and that's why we like them in the winter, right?
That is correct.
1,000%. Thank you so much for listening and or watching the Food for Thoughtcast. Bye-bye.
Bye.